within the music theory itself, there's several layers. There's theory of sound, sound versus silence, as John Cage wrote about. There's the theories of listening from Pauline Oliveros and other theorists who've talked about sonic awareness related to that as a more general category. And having awareness both at very specific details and then a more general awareness of the environment. They talk about two different levels in which you can perceive sound. But of course, when we are working with this area, you have the further complexity of the movement. Sometimes, in the best situation, they're sort of equally balanced, where your attention can go to the movement and the sound simultaneously, where the movement, that's that edge that I've been looking for, where the movement encourages the sound and the sound encourages the movement. Turns out that reverberation is often very helpful because I think it delays that connection or allows you to play in that space where the sound is more alive for a longer period. Having the Tuesday night sound movement labs at St. Matthew's was fantastic. We only had small groups of people come each time, but that turned out to be quite useful for me. And there was one time where it was just Eli and I, and that was one of my most useful sessions, actually. And I hope to do more. Actually, I probably will do some more soon, because there's definitely interest. The history of instrument making is really interesting as well. I am only scratched the surface, but I'm aware that Leonardo da Vinci was one of the first people who really had a fascination for instrument making, trying to create experimental sounds and approach it from a scientific and artistic point, the way he did with many subjects. He was both a technologist and a scientist in a way, and an artist. There's also the futurist in Italy. There's a man named Rousseau, who I've learned about recently from another composer scholar named Luciano Cessa. He looked into the history of some synthesized sounds that were made by a man named Rousseau. He was one of the first people to decide to take noise seriously. He used industrial parts, did some dumpster diving, much like what I've done, because he needed to find really round parts to do certain things, sort of like a hurdy-gurdy, where the sound is being generated by by a crank, and by other things that file sounds in a circular motion. So you get things like sirens and engines and engine noises and raspy things that are created off of these gears of sorts. And it's fascinating history too, that there's whole theories of instrument making that people borrowed from and built off of. It turned out that these futurists were warmongers, and a lot of them they were war enthusiasts because they wanted to win back parts from the Habsburg Empire. They wanted parts of the territory back for Italy. So there's a complex history, and a lot of them died. So there's complex history and a complex interaction between philosophy, lots of women involved with it as well. And writing manifestos, and some of which I've dabbled in. Jeff at the Audio Foundation, Jeff Henderson, was a very interesting source of information. Maybe I can include part of his interview, which he kindly agreed to one day, spent an hour with me on the Audio Foundation.
Okay, one more. Let me start. I kind of lost presence.